We begin tonight with Mycoplasma bovis. 39 farms have now been tested positive for the cattle disease, but the scale of the problem is perhaps best illustrated by the fact the government has set aside $85 million for a culling program, and the Prime Minister this morning called that a starting point. Speaking after a farm visit to Waikato, Jacinda Ardern said the true cost to the country could be much, much more than that. The PM was there because a week ago today, MPI announced M. bovis had been found in Waikato for the first time. In short, the cattle disease has spread from the south across Cook Strait well into the North Island. Agriculture Minister Damien O'Connor, who was with the Prime Minister, acknowledged mistakes have been made.
Perhaps we could have moved a little faster. I think we perhaps underestimated the significance of this disease. Most other countries haven't reacted because they haven't done much about it. That's why we had a unique challenge. And so in hindsight, perhaps mistakes may have been made. In the end, this is a unique challenge. We're doing the very best we can.
More from Waikato and the politicians later, but let's head south. MPI now says Southland is where M. bovis first took hold. That's at odds with the earlier belief it was first found on a South Canterbury farm. And while steps have been taken to trace infected South Canterbury cattle, controls on stock from Southland have only been brought in much more recently. Low controls, greater spread, more problems. Conan Young and visual journalist Dan Cook travelled to Southland and attempted to talk to the farm owner and those trying to pick up the pieces.
Ben Walling first knew he had a problem when he heard a nearby dairy farmer, Alfons Zeestraten, had been declared as having a Mycoplasma bovis infected farm. He had bought 60 calves from the Zeestratens just a month prior in November 2017 and immediately locked down his own farm in case it was decided his farm was next. Truth be told, he knew something was up with his recently purchased calves the day they arrived.
The ones what were still alive when they did the blood test, there were about a 94% of them were infected. It's just a bit over 400, I think it was, the final tally that were destroyed on the property. Either animal welfare or MPI did a cull on the property, or we shot just because of animal welfare reasons. They were just so poorly they couldn't carry on as they were.
Ben Walling says watching the animals he cared for being put down was heartbreaking and not what he got into farming to do.
So how many died in total?
Of his? Oh, they're all dead now. Yeah, well, nearly all of them were dead within 3 or 4 months of coming on the property.
On top of the sick calves that had to be destroyed and buried in a landfill, his remaining 1,300 healthy animals had to be sent to the works early, robbing him of the money he'd been hoping to make through fattening them up. His partner, Sarah Flintoft, found the loss of the animals particularly hard to take.
To get hit like this is just devastating for our family, and we want to keep farming. That's all we ever want to do, is go livestock farming. It's quite a crushing blow, really.
The loss of the calves has also been tough for their 3 children.
They have people coming around all the time and seeing mum and dad a bit stressed and upset about it all. It's taken its toll on our family. And Maisie, all she wanted to do was be a farmer, and some of her things she did for primary school. She said to me early on in the piece that, I don't know if I want to be a farmer now.
As an infected property, it's likely to be out of action for at least 7 months, meaning they can't use the feed they've been growing in preparation for winter. Then there's the ongoing cost and hassle of having to disinfect every vehicle that comes onto the property to prevent the disease being transferred to somebody else's place in the faeces from infected cattle.
Our total cost on this farm at the moment is about 1.3 million and rising. The total profit cost at the end, I don't know. It depends on whether they get this sorted out and cleaned up so we can get on with farming.
Ben Walling's infected calves came from one of 3 farms owned by Alfons Zeestraten and his family just outside Winton. In fact, all of the infections detected so far from Southland to Waikato can be linked back to these farms.
Hi, Conan here.
Yeah, good day, Alfons. I missed your phone call.
Oh, hi, Alfons. Yeah, Conan Young at Radio New Zealand. How are you?
Thanks, how are you?
Yeah, good. Hey, look, we're just wanting to know if we could come and see you and do an interview with you about the M. bovis on your farm.
I just need to think about it for a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
After promising to get back to me, I heard nothing more from Alfons Zeestraten, so we paid him a visit.
Alfons Zeestraten didn't want to do an interview on tape or on camera.
He told me, however, that he and his wife were good people, but they'd been portrayed as criminals. He said he had no idea how M. bovis had made its way onto his property. He said he'd done nothing illegal, including importing any illegal bull semen or illegal drugs. I asked him if he had anything to say to the farmers that he'd sold infected cattle to. And to that he said that he wanted to wait until the outcome of the MPI investigation was known before he said anything. The owner of Vet South in Winton, Mark Bryan, says while the first infections came off the Zeestraten's farms as early as December 2015, just how M. bovis ended up there remains a mystery.
We don't know where it's come from or how it got in. We don't really know. I mean, MPI obviously has a suspicion, but we don't really know conclusively if it's arrived there first or wherever. So I think it's a bit unfair to kind of speculate, and certainly not very fair on them. They're people that are part of the community, and they need to be looked after as much as anybody else, really.
Mark Bryan says while dairy farmers like the Zeestratens have been able to continue milking their infected cows and bringing in an income, beef farmers such as Ben Walling have had to cull their entire herd and start again from scratch. He says whereas adult cows take a while to show any signs of the disease, calves have very little resistance.
I think the worst bit about it is we know we can't treat them. There's no treatment for M. bovis. The best of them die quickly or are culled, and the worst of them have a horrible slow sort of death.
Mark Bryan shows me photos of the calves found in Southland that were too sick to send to the works.
They look pretty poor condition. They're quite hollow gutted, quite thin. Some of them have got dirty tails, so they've got a bit of diarrhea, and they look quite hollow in their abdomen. Ears are a bit down. They really don't look very comfortable calves.
What ended up happening with these calves?
These calves ended up being diagnosed with M. bovis, so this was part of a mob of calves that I think from memory 90% of them were diagnosed positive with M. bovis subsequently, and they were all culled.
And amongst all of this, the business of farming carries on. Mark Bryan says in Southland that means moving cattle further afield for winter grazing.
In Southland and South Otago has to move off the dairy platform in the next 10 days, and we still don't have a clear picture of how that will happen. And what it will mean for farmers under restrictions, or if you're a grazier and you've got a contract to take cows, they're still being tested, they might be put under a restriction in the next week or so, and that lack of clarity is causing a huge amount of stress.
Southland farmer Bevan Colley has become the spokesperson for the Mycoplasma bovis action group. He says the lack of information coming from MPI about which farms are infected has been causing a lot of stress for him and his neighbours.
A lot of confusion on where this outbreak's at as it stands now, and a lot of frustration, I suppose, in that they know there are people around them that are being tested, but they don't know who or where, and in some cases it's right next door.
If just one cow becomes sick, farmers face losing their entire herd.
If they're declared a infected property, there's a lot at stake. Like you've got, for example, you've got dairy farmers that have spent a lifetime building up a herd, in which they lose that herd. They lose that thing they've had a passion about for so long. And there's a lot of heartbreak with that, because there's a lot of pride, a lot of time, and a lot of themselves have been given up to achieve where they've got to.
There are now 39 properties infected with M. bovis. If you're watching, they're the red dots on this map. Those not able to move cattle off their farms are in orange, and the blue dots, some 1,700 farms, are at risk of an infection. The government has committed $85 million in funding to a frontline response to Mycoplasma bovis. A decision on whether to cull infected cattle to either eradicate the disease or to find a way to live with it is expected. For Sarah Flintoft and Ben Walling, the damage has already been done.
I knew just about every single calf. We had our pet calves, we named calves, we would give them a bit of a pat or a cuddle whenever we went out to feed them, because you had your favourites. You had the ones that weren't even pets, but you knew them well because they were such characters. They were the first one to the gate, or the first ones to lead the mob through. I'm quite devastated by the whole fact that they've all now gone. I think people don't realise how haunting a farm that hasn't got any animals on it is, when it had been such a busy, productive farm.
The couple will find out in July if they're clear from M. bovis and able to get back to doing what they do best. In Southland for Checkpoint, ko Conan Young tēnei.